Now, if you're watching this video, then I'm going to assume that you're a big fan of camellias, and why wouldn't you be? They're absolutely wonderful. They've got that rich green evergreen foliage that lasts throughout the year, hence evergreen, and also that they have these wonderful bright and completely all over the shrub flowers, and they really are something to behold. However, if you want to keep them at their best, then you need to know how to care for camellias. And to find out how to care for them at their best, you need to find out where they come from, the environment they've evolved in, and try and mimic that as best in your garden as you possibly can. Now, there are over 220 described species of camellia, but thankfully there's only a couple of species that are used for ornamental planting, and that are the hybrid and cultivated species of Camellia japonica, which looks like this, and Camellia sasanka, that looks like this. Now, the good news is that they both live in the elevated forests of China and Japan, so they are used to being cool, they're used to being in the shade, and that's why they are such a good garden plant here in the UK. Now, when it comes to care of camellias, the biggest issue that you tend to come across is having camellias not planted in the right soil conditions. Now, camellias are ericaceous plants, and that means that they tend to struggle to take up nitrogen and magnesium when soil conditions are alkaline. And what you'll see is discoloration or yellowing of the leaves, pronounced green leaf veins with a yellow background. So in order to avoid that, you need to grow camellias in an acidic soil, which, if you don't have a natural acidic soil, then you can always buy ericaceous compost and plant your camellias in that. Now, another problem common with planting camellias is siting them in the wrong position. As I said before, in their native habitat, they tend to be growing on the as like a under canopy plant in the forest, so they're not in the sun all day. They tend to be semi-shaded, shaded plants. So if you plant your camellia in the UK in a full sun position, then you're going to start getting scorching. So if you see that happen, and you see you get like a white kind of covering on top of the leaves, which is really just the top of the leaf just sort of coming apart, then you know it's in the wrong place, and you might want to consider lifting it and putting it somewhere in the shade, or at least out of the full strength of midday sun. Now, in their native forest habitat, the ground is generally moist throughout the year. So when you try and grow them in this country with our sometimes long hot summers with periods of drought, they can struggle. If it gets too stressed, if it gets heat stressed, or becomes dry in the soil, then the plant can react to that. And what it tends to do is it will drop, not all the time and not all of them, but quite often it will drop its flower buds. So if it drops its flower buds over the summer period, then you're not going to have flowering in the spring. And just beware that if you are growing them under shade, but under the shade of a tree, now that tree is going to have a massive root system compared to the camellia. Camellia root systems are quite fibrous, quite near the surface, so it cannot compete with a tree under dry conditions. So make sure, even though they're not really doing much, they might be hidden by some other plants, make sure that over the summer, during periods of drought, you get your watering can, you go out and you water your camellias. So that's kind of all the things you need to worry about when it comes to caring for your camellia. But there is a problem which is related, it's important, and that's regards to cutting or trimming back your camellia plants. Quite often, people look at them and they go, I need to get that tidy, and they want to go out and they want to cut them back. But if you cut them at the wrong time of year, you'll end up cutting all of the baby buds that are going to be opening in the spring. And again, you will stop that flowering. And there's only really one time of the year that you can cut camellias and maintain the flowering for the following season, and that is immediately after flowering, and I would say a bit further than that, just before the end of flowering, because as soon as the plant's finished flowering, it's going to re-divert all its energy into producing its new bud, and on that new bud you tend to have a new leaf to make the new branch work, and also on the other side of that it tends to be a flower bud. So you just got to be very careful with that, with your timing on cutting back camellias, and that's kind of everything really that you need to know. But if there's something that I've missed, then don't forget, you can add that in the comments. We would love to hear from you. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.